There is a feeling that comes after the storm, the emotional hangover. The house is quiet again, the words have been said, the anger has receded, leaving the shoreline of your heart littered with the debris of shame. You understand now where the energy comes from. You know the good person persona built a dam and that the pressure simply became too much. Intellectually, it makes sense. But in the quiet aftermath, that knowledge doesn't always soothe the sting. The overreaction still feels like a failure, a loss of control, a terrifying glimpse of the monster you swore you weren't. But what if we have been calling it by the wrong name? What if overreaction is the most misleading word in our emotional vocabulary? Because it implies the reaction was too much, when in reality, it may have been perfectly proportional, not to the situation in front of you, but to the history behind you, to the accumulation of every silenced no, every swallowed truth, every unmet need. Carl Jung taught us that the psyche has its own language, a language of symbols, of dreams, and of eruptions. An overreaction is not random noise. It is a signal, a perfectly calibrated distress signal from a part of you that has been ignored. It's a psychic fingerprint of a specific, unmet need. And the scream is a message, a coded message, written in a language you were taught to forget, the language of the shadow. So the question is not, how do I stop overreacting? The real question, the one that leads to healing, is, how do I learn to translate the scream? What if every outburst, every moment you feel you have too much emotion, is not a problem to be fixed, but a gift to be unwrapped?
The first instinct after the scream is to silence the echo, to push it down, to apologize profusely, to analyze what you did wrong, to promise yourself never again. This instinct is driven by shame, and shame has a very specific job in your inner ecosystem. It is the persona's emergency response team, its riot police. Its function is to shut down any investigation immediately, to make you look away from the wreckage of the eruption so you don't discover the truth about the faulty dam you've been living behind. Shame whispers, "Don't look there. It's too ugly. You are broken." But this is the secret that begins to change everything. Shame is not a reflection of your worth. It is a measure of your conditioning. It is the guardian of your old story. And to translate the scream, we must first learn to gently ask shame to step aside, to treat the overreaction not as a crime scene, but as a sacred text. A text that is confusing, chaotic, and emotionally charged, but holds the key to your freedom. So how do we read this text? We begin with a framework, a way to bring order to the chaos. Every overreaction, no matter how big or small, has 3 distinct layers, like an archeological dig into your own soul. The first layer is the surface event. The second is the historical echo. And the third, the deepest layer, is the unspoken need. Let's begin with the first layer, the one that is most visible and most misleading, the surface event. This is the tiny spark that seemingly lit the forest fire. It's the forgotten milk, the socks left on the floor, the colleague who interrupted you in a meeting. On its own, the surface event is almost always insignificant. It makes no logical sense that something so small could provoke a reaction so large. And this is why we judge ourselves so harshly. We think we are reacting to the socks on the floor. The truth is, we are never reacting to the socks on the floor. Consider Maria, a 38-year-old HR manager. Like Chloe, she is the good one at her office. She is competent, endlessly patient, and always the one to absorb extra work with a smile. One afternoon in a project meeting, she presents an idea she has spent weeks researching. As she is finishing, a junior colleague, Mark, cuts in and says, "That's a good start, but what if we did it this way?" and proceeds to represent a slightly modified version of her idea as his own. The room is silent, and from Maria a voice she does not recognize, cold as ice, says, "Mark, I would appreciate it if you would let me finish speaking. What you just demonstrated was not only unprofessional, it was profoundly disrespectful." The air freezes. Mark flushes crimson. Her boss looks stunned. Maria feels a wave of nausea. She has violated the primary rule of her persona. Be nice, don't make waves. Later that day, she is consumed by a firestorm of shame. She replays the moment 100 times. "I was so harsh. I humiliated him. I'm a terrible person." Pause here and ask, what was your last overreaction? What was the surface event? The tiny, seemingly insignificant trigger? Can you see it for what it is? A catalyst, not a cause. Maria's mind is fixated on the surface event, Mark's interruption. Her shame tells her she overreacted to a simple comment. But if we, as gentle archeologists, ask shame to step aside, we can see the truth. The interruption itself was trivial, but it landed on a wound that was decades deep. The surface event is never the real story. It is the pressure point. It is the finger that presses on a deep, invisible bruise. The pain you feel is not from the finger. It is from the bruise underneath. To understand the scream, we cannot stay at the surface. Analyzing the surface event, judging whether Mark was right or wrong, whether Maria's tone was too harsh, is a distraction. It keeps you trapped in the logic of the persona. It's like analyzing the matchstick instead of asking why the whole forest was doused in gasoline. The real work, the true shadow work, begins when we have the courage to ask the next question. The question that takes us beneath the surface. The question is not, why did that small thing make me so angry? The question is, what older, deeper story did that small thing just wake up inside of me? This is where we find the second layer of the eruption, the historical echo. And it is here, in the echoing halls of our own past, that we begin to find the true source of the monster's power.
The historical echo. This is the second, more powerful layer. It is the recognition that the emotion you are feeling right now is not new. It is an old feeling, a ghost from your past that has been reawakened by the surface event. Your body remembers this feeling. Your nervous system knows it intimately. The situation is new, but the pain is ancient. To find the echo, we must ask ourselves the question again. What older, deeper story did that small thing just wake up inside of me? And then we must be very still and listen for the first memory that surfaces. It may not seem logical. It might be a fleeting image, a feeling, a scent. Trust it. The unconscious speaks in the language of association, not logic. Let's return to Maria, still reeling from her outburst at Mark. She asks herself this question. What older story did Mark's interruption wake up inside of me? At first, her mind is blank, filled only with the noise of her own self-criticism. But she stays with the question. She breathes, and an image floats up. Faint at first, then sharp and vivid. She is 9 years old. She is at the family dinner table. Her father, a loud, charismatic man, is holding court, telling a story. Little Maria, bursting with excitement about a prize she won at school, sees a small pause in his story and jumps in. "Daddy, Daddy, I won the spelling bee today." His father stops. The table goes quiet. He doesn't yell. He does something far more devastating. He turns to her, a look of cold annoyance on his face, and says, "Maria, do not interrupt when adults are speaking. Can't you see I was in the middle of something? Now I've lost my train of thought." He turns away from her, and the adult conversation resumes as if she had never spoken, as if she did not exist. In that moment, a 9-year-old girl experiences something that feels like a small death, a public erasure. The message she received was not simply, "Don't interrupt." The message was, "Your voice doesn't matter. Your accomplishments are less important than my stories. Your presence is an annoyance. To be loved, you must be silent and invisible." This is the historical echo. The event at the project meeting with Mark was not an isolated incident. It was a perfect replica of that core wound. Mark, like her father, made her feel invisible. He, like her father, treated her contribution as a mere stepping stone for his own voice. He, like her father, publicly erased her. The rage that erupted from Maria was not the rage of a 38-year-old HR manager at a careless colleague. It was the stored, compressed, and righteous rage of a 9-year-old girl who was never allowed to say, "That's not fair. I matter too. Listen to me." Pause here. Take a breath and let that sink in. The energy of your overreaction is often the stored energy of a past injustice that you were too small, too powerless, or too scared to protest at the time. The monster is the ghost of a younger you finally screaming a truth it was forced to swallow decades ago. This changes everything, doesn't it? It reframes the entire experience. The overreaction is no longer a moment of shameful, irrational madness. It becomes a moment of profound, albeit chaotic, truth-telling. It is your psyche's attempt to heal the past by replaying it in the present, hoping for a different outcome. Hoping that this time someone will finally listen. Hoping that this time you will not be erased. Carl Jung believed that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives and we will call it fate. This is what he meant. As long as the memory of that dinner table remained an unconscious wound for Maria, she was fated to re-experience that pain. She would be drawn to situations and people that made her feel invisible, because her soul was desperately trying to bring the original wound to the surface so it could be healed. Her outburst at Mark was not fate. It was an opportunity. A painful, messy, and deeply uncomfortable opportunity to finally meet the ghost. When you can connect your present-day eruption to a historical echo, you create a space between you and the overwhelming emotion. You are no longer just in the anger. You are observing it. You can say, "Ah, I see. This isn't just about the socks on the floor. This is about the echo of every time I felt my efforts were taken for granted. This is the echo of feeling invisible and unappreciated." This understanding does not excuse harsh behavior, but it does explain it. And in that explanation, shame begins to lose its power. It is replaced by something far more potent: compassion. Compassion for the adult who lost control. And most importantly, a deep, aching compassion for the child who had to endure the original wound in silence. You were not crazy for reacting so strongly. You are a time traveler. And a small, seemingly innocent event in the present has just thrown you back into the most painful room of your past. But now you are no longer a powerless child. You are an adult with the capacity to understand. and you are finally ready to uncover the one thing that child has been trying to tell you all along. You are ready to find the final layer of the text, the unspoken need.
We have arrived at the heart of the matter. The final layer. The source code of the scream. The unspoken need. Every overreaction, at its absolute core, is a cry for a legitimate need that has been systematically denied. It is the part of your soul that is starving. The surface event is the trigger. The historical echo is the old wound. But the unspoken need is the medicine. It is the answer. It is the key that unlocks the cage. To find this need, we must ask the third and most transformative question. We look at the historical echo, at the child in the memory, and we ask with all the compassion we can muster, what did that younger version of me need in that moment that they did not receive? Let us go back one last time to Maria. She is holding the memory of that 9-year-old girl at the dinner table. The girl who was silenced, erased, and made to feel small. Maria asks the question, what did she need? And the answer rises, clear and simple. It wasn't just to be heard, it was deeper than that. She needed to be seen. She needed her father to turn to her, to let his own story wait for a moment, and to say, "You won spelling bee? That's wonderful. Tell me about it." She needed a moment of recognition, a moment where her inner world was acknowledged as valid and important. She needed to feel that she mattered. This is the unspoken need. The need to be seen. The need to matter. This is the need that has been starving inside Maria for 30 years. It has been exiled to her shadow, labeled as needy, attention-seeking, or selfish. Her entire good person persona was built around denying this fundamental human need. She became hyper-competent, overly helpful, and endlessly accommodating in a desperate, unconscious attempt to earn the validation she never received freely as a child. And her eruption at Mark? That was not a monster. That was the primal scream of a 30-year starvation. It was the voice of the unspoken need finally bursting forth in a torrent of pain. The scream was a translation of the need. It was saying, "See me, acknowledge my contribution, I am here, and I matter." Pause for a moment and go to your own historical echo, that memory that surfaced for you. Look at the younger you in that scene and ask that gentle question. What did you need? Did you need safety? Did you need reassurance? Did you need to know it was okay to make a mistake? Did you need someone to protect you? Did you need permission to be angry? Did you need simply to be seen? Whatever the answer is, that is the core of your shadow work. That is the part of you that you must now learn to parent. That is the need you must now learn to give yourself. This is the profound alchemy of Jungian psychology. You do not fix the past, you cannot. But you can change your relationship to it. You can give your inner child today what they did not receive yesterday. You are no longer a powerless child waiting for an adult to see you. You are the adult, and the child is within you, still waiting. The process of healing begins when you start to consciously meet that unspoken need. For Maria, this doesn't mean she needs to quit her job or confront her father. It means she starts a small, radical practice of seeing herself. After a successful project, instead of immediately moving on to the next task, she pauses. She takes 30 seconds, and she says to herself silently, "You did a good job, Maria. You worked hard on that. Your contribution mattered." She starts a journal, not to list her failures, but to document her small wins. The moments she spoke her truth. The moments she honored her own time. She is reparenting herself. She is feeding the starving part of her soul one small spoonful of recognition at a time. This is how we dismantled the monster. Not by fighting it, but by feeding it what it truly craves. When the unspoken need for respect is met, the rage has no reason to scream. When the unspoken need for safety is met, the anxiety has no reason to flare. When the unspoken need to be seen is met, the desperation for external validation begins to quiet. Your overreactions are a roadmap. They are a gift from your unconscious. Each eruption is an invitation to dig deeper, to find the surface event, to follow it down to the historical echo, and to unearth the treasure buried at the very bottom, the unspoken need. This framework, surface event, historical echo, unspoken need, is your translator. It is the tool you can use to turn the terrifying scream of the shadow into a clear, understandable whisper from the soul. A whisper that once heard will guide you home to yourself. It is not an easy path. It requires courage and a radical commitment to self-compassion. But it is the only path that leads out of the endless cycle of repression and eruption. It is the path to becoming whole.
Today, we did more than just talk about overreactions. We performed a kind of soul retrieval. We walked through a framework that transforms a moment of shame into a moment of sacred communication. Let's trace our steps one last time. First, we learn to look past the surface event, understanding it is merely the trigger, not the cause. Then we had the courage to listen for the historical echo, connecting our present-day pain to a past wound, and in doing so, we replaced shame with compassion. And finally, we dug to the deepest layer, to the heart of the scream, and unearthed the true treasure, the unspoken need. This three-part framework, surface event, historical echo, unspoken need, is yours now. It is a translator, a map, a tool to bring consciousness to what was once unconscious. It is the beginning of the end of being a stranger to yourself. The eruptions won't stop overnight, but your relationship to them has changed forever. An overreaction is no longer a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that a part of you is asking to be healed. It is an invitation from your deepest self to come home. The power is now in your hands. Not the power to control your emotions, but the power to understand them, to honor them, and to begin the slow, beautiful, and life-altering work of giving yourself the very thing you've needed all along. This work begins within. It is the practice of self-reparenting, of meeting your own needs with the love and attention you may not have received. You are the one you have been waiting for. But as you start to use this framework, as you get better at identifying the unspoken need of the child within, you will inevitably come face to face with the original force that caused this child to hide in the first place. You will meet the source of the wound. For many of us who learn to be the good person, that source is a single primal fear. It is the fear that if we express our needs, if we show our anger, if we take up space, we will not be liked. We will be rejected. We will be abandoned. This is the deepest fear in the people-pleaser's shadow, the fear of not being liked. It is the gatekeeper that stands between you and your authentic self. And before we can truly heal, we must be willing to look this gatekeeper in the eye. That is the next step of our journey together, to explore the very roots of this fear and to understand why it holds such immense power over our lives. If this framework for understanding your reactions has opened a new door for you, I invite you to take one small step. Think of your last overreaction. In the comments below, without sharing the story, can you name the unspoken need you've discovered? Was it a need for respect, for safety, for recognition? Simply naming it is a powerful act of integration. Thank you for walking this path today. The courage it takes to look within is immense, and you are doing the work.